So, for my cultural interview, I decided to interview a woman from my church whose name is Cheryl Williams. It was actually really interesting because I had talked to her in the past, not really about her cultural background or anything, but um, just about, you know, things from church. Um, and I had always thought that I knew she was born in Hawaii, so I thought she was just Hawaiian. Um, but I found out that her cultural background is a lot more than that. She mentioned that her mother's side is Chinese and German, and that her father is Samoan, or that she also has Samoan, and that her father was Portuguese and Puerto Rican. Um, so she's uh, just a mixture of all these different cultures. But she said that she primarily just identifies as Polynesian. Um, so I selected her just because I know her from church, and I knew she was um, available and willing to talk to me about this sort of stuff. So my comfort level in asking questions was pretty comfortable. Um, I, I feel like I have a good relationship with Cheryl. My wife and her served together at church and in a role where they work together very closely. Um, so she knows my wife very well, and so that kind of helped. That kind of that comfort in asking her those sorts of questions. And she seemed to be pretty comfortable in answering the questions as well. She was kind of taken aback by how deep some of the questions were, especially like um, talking about uh, gender roles and family and that and rearing of children and that sort of thing. And she mentioned towards the end um, after we ended the questions and the recording that she hadn't really thought about a lot of the things I was asking in a long time, and so it kind of helped her to remember the things of where she came from. And she talked about how she didn't really learn a lot about the things from Samoa until after her mom had already passed away. So she kind of had to do a lot of that cultural exploring without her mother. Um, but so I just think that she felt pretty comfortable in answering all the questions. She just was kind of taken aback by some of them. Just she kind of just straight out said it. Um, I think she and I, culturally speaking, um, are very similar in the idea of like our religion. We share a religion, and that religion is a large part of our culture. Um, and she grew up in the United States. Um, grew up, was born in Hawaii, lived there for 4 years, and then grew up mostly in California. Something she mentioned that kind of stood out to me is um, the importance of family, specifically for her, and in the Polynesian culture. Um, like family is very important to me as well, but she talked about the importance of having family gatherings and taking care of your elders. Uh, any person that's older than you gets referred to as auntie or uncle. So that's very different from what I grew up with and what I'm used to. Um, and she talked about just how she had some cousins that would come together and put their money together to pay off their mother's mortgage and stuff like that. So just making sure that they are taking care of their family members, whether it's financially or physically. Um, so that kind of stood out to me. Um, but like I said, she and I share a religion, and so a lot of the religious parts of when I would ask her about religion, a lot of those things were things that I agreed with, things that I grew up with. Um, I was interested to find out that her family's been members of our church for she said 5 generations, which is a lot more than I thought, because we're members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, um, which the history of that church only goes back to 1830. Um, so her being a baby boomer, which is another cultural difference between us, just our age difference, but her being a baby boomer, I thought that, and being a descendant of people from Portugal and Puerto Rico and Germany and China and Samoa, I thought that her family would not have such a deep background as members of the church. So I thought that was really interesting to see that. I think overall, this experience kind of opened up my eyes to how different we all are. Like even though Cheryl and I agreed on many things when it came to religious point of views and like we both have an agreement when it comes to the importance of the family. I thought it was very interesting to hear about how when she was growing up, her parents were very harsh, and how that sentiment has kind of shifted in modern days. So not only culturally, but um, like it was her goal to uh, not have that kind of child rearing in her household. The other thing that I thought was really interesting, um, and I kind of came away from looking at it differently, was the relationship between her family and school. Um, she talked about how her mother and her father um, didn't go to college. Her father, her stepfather, dropped out in the 8th or 9th grade, and her mom got a high school diploma, and how she herself went to college but didn't graduate. So I thought it was very interesting hearing about the importance of education that she and her husband uh, kind of had for their children. Like they didn't push it; they just told them to do their very best, and they ended up having children who graduated from college. One that graduated multiple times with different degrees. So I thought that was very interesting, seeing the difference between how education was kind of pushed in my family compared to her family and how it's pushed. I can only imagine um, in other families of different ethnic backgrounds and cultural backgrounds to mine, um, just because it's not something that is immediately um, important to them. It's not something that they um, push on. They just immediately want to think of getting money and providing for their families, and that's a very honorable thing to do. So I think that was some of the things that just stood out the most to me.